everyone, welcome back to Our Place. We are excited to be speaking to Sergeant Michael Cheek today. He is a sergeant in Dunwoody, Georgia, and has been a police officer for 17 years, has done some amazing things in Dunwoody, one of them being the Griffin Project, which I will let you speak about a little bit more later, but he is here to educate our families and our members on law enforcement, exposing your child to a police officer, and a bunch of resources that are out there that you guys might not otherwise know about. So thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. Good to be with you.
So I would love for you to jump in by just telling us a little bit about the Griffin Project. I know that you started that, and I think it's such a unique and amazing program that you do for the city of Dunwoody, and I would love for parents to know about that.
Cool. Thanks for the opportunity. So again, I'm Sergeant Michael Cheek. I'm the Public Information Officer for Dunwoody Police Department. And so I have an autistic son. My son was diagnosed with autism in January of 2013. So 10 years ago this month, right around this time. And the project came about in kind of several different ways. One of the biggest ways it came about is when he started kindergarten in public school, we got him to start going into general education classes from his special education classes just to see how he would do.
Yeah.
And we started noticing that inclusion work that he was doing in his general education class, in addition to the special needs stuff that he was doing, was really working for him really, really well. Eventually, in that particular year, which was his kindergarten year, he actually, by the end of the year, was spending the vast majority of his day inside the general education classroom and not the special education classroom. And he had, education-wise at the time, he had pretty much caught up with all the kids in that class in a shorter amount of time. So I saw something like that really work for him.
Yeah.
And so the concept of inclusion was there. I saw how that worked for him. And then the other thing that got me thinking about how I could do this is when I was in high school, I actually participated in a program called the Buddy Club. And ironically, I was paired with an autistic child or one of the autistic kids in my high school. And we would basically just go hang out with the kid, talk to them, be their friend, truly be their quote unquote buddy and someone to hang out with. And we do it like once a month, going over there and, helping out with the special needs kids. Mm-hmm. So I thought about those two things in combination. I'm like, you know what? This concept worked for my son. This is something we could do. And I thought, the easiest possible way I could reach these kids and help them out is at the schools. So I came up with the idea of how to do it. And basically what we do is we go to some of the schools around the city who will, let us come hang out with the kids. And we basically go into the special ed classes once a month and teach them about us and interact with them. We teach them about us. I have demonstrations for canine that's done. I have our crime scene tech go show them how she lifts fingerprints and takes pictures. Chief Grogan will go and talk to the kids as well. So it's really just the concept of exposing these kids to law enforcement, a controlled environment, and helping them learn to interact with us. And in turn, we learn to interact with them as well and learn more about them. And that's basically the essence of the program. And
it's like you were saying, I've talked to so many people and families that you have the component of, I would like my child to be exposed to law enforcement so they're not afraid or anything like that. But I also would love for law enforcement to learn more about my child and stuff. So that this is such a creative and unique way to do that. I think it's great to let parents know about that because, do you think it's something if they live obviously outside of Dunwoody, which a lot of our members live in other states, they could go to their local law enforcement and say, hey, they're doing this. Is this something maybe we could look into doing at some of our schools?
Sure.
And bring it up?
Well, they couldn't go do that. I think it's a great idea for both parents and police to have that interaction. And I'm in a unique position because, like you said earlier, I've been a cop for 17 years. But I'm also the parent of an autistic child. Right. I understand what parents feel, but I also understand how law enforcement reacts as well. So I see both sides of the equation, and it's something that I feel I can help out with because of that position that I'm in.
Yeah. Well, so if you're a parent watching this, take this interview and have them learn from you and the program that you guys started. Okay, so we're going to shift a little bit because we have talked to so many different organizations, so many different people that they are in these situations where they either have just moved into a new city and they go, should I let my local police officers know about the situation with my child, especially in cases where they're runners? I mean, we have had a lot of families who my child is a runner. So I want to talk about like what the best options are for those families. And I know that we've talked about the Smart 911 program. So talk a little bit about that program. It's available in multiple states across the country, and what it does for families.
Sure. So Smart 911 it's a free program, and you basically go to their website, which is smart911.com. And what you do is you go create a profile, and you can put all kinds of stuff in there: pets, family members, special needs, all kinds of stuff in there. The beauty of that account is it's transferable from state to state. So if you ever move from, say, Georgia, and you move all the way across the country to, say, California, if there's a particular agency over there, it's transferable. You don't have to redo anything. But basically, in its simplest form, and what it does is you create this profile, and when you call 911 at a participating agency, your profile pops up that has all this information there that you've advised about. It's the easiest and simplest way that I can tell you that it works. And that's basically what it does. So whatever you put in there, whatever you've told a dispatch, or whatever you've put in your profile, will show up pending that the dispatch center participates in the Smart 911 program.
Okay. So I'll walk you through a scenario that's actually something that I've experienced personally, but I had a sibling that would, when I was younger, would run away a lot. And every time my parents called the police, it was, here's the situation. And it was like a lot of explaining. And it was every single time it happened, they were having to go through that. So do programs like Smart 911 prevent having to go into the full explanation every time?
I would say no, because you're not always you're not always going to get the same officer responding who are always familiar, especially if you're at a really large. You live in a place where there's a really large police department. Like, say you live in New York City. New York City's got 30,000 police officers.
Right.
Odds that you're going to get the same cop over and over and over again is very, very slim. But if you come to a place and live in a place like Dunwoody, where we've only got 64 sworn police officers, the odds that you'll get the same officer sometimes are a little bit better. So no, it's not going to prevent it, but it certainly can help get information to the responding units quicker than it showing up and you having to explain it.
Okay. So talking about families who live, we get all the time, families live in rural areas and access to services is more challenging. They just have a harder time getting assistance and finding connection and all that kind of stuff. And that is one of our big missions at our place, is serving those families in those rural areas, letting them know that there are options. So if you are a family that lives in a smaller area and it's maybe a smaller police department and there is no Smart 911, but they feel like it's important to have that connection with the family and law enforcement, what advice would you give to those families?
Well, there's a couple of things. The first thing I would say is just be proactive, and I would actually go to the police department and explain your situation to them. For example, if you were to come up here to us and tell me you have a special needs child and you'd like us to know about that, we can actually enter you. And let's just, for the sake of argument, for the sake of the example, say we didn't have the Smart 911 thing.
Right.
You could come to us and I could actually enter your child into our records management system. Our records management system is also linked with our dispatch system. So if I were to run your child's name through our system, say, seeing if they were missing or something like that, not only will it pop up with the national hits for like missing persons or wanted and stuff like that, but it would also hit on our local records, and it can show you all the local interactions we had that may not have necessarily ended in an arrest or something like that. And we can see the information about those individuals. So I would tell you, go to the police department, tell them about your child, and give them the information about your child or your older parent or whatever it is that
Yeah.
you're trying to talk about. There's a way that you can have that on record so that they are familiar. That's one way to do it.
Okay.
The other way I would say do it is go introduce your child to them.
Yeah.
You know, take your child with them and introduce them to law enforcement, which I'm sure we'll probably talk a little deeper into in the next little section.
Yeah. So is it something that you feel like would be beneficial for families and loved ones to do, even if they do have access to that smart 911 thing? I mean, there's probably no harm in doing both.
Oh, absolutely not. You know, my son is going to be able to live on his own one day.
Mhm.
Now, is he move out when he's 18? Probably not. But when he's 24, 25, yeah, that's very probable. Eventually, he's going to live on his own, and he needs to learn to function on his own as
Right.
a grown adult and learn how to deal with his disability. Law enforcement is an entity of society that is not going away anytime soon. We are here,
Right.
and the odds that anybody out here is going to have an interaction with law enforcement is pretty good. The most common interactions are traffic stops and car accidents, and pretty common things that happen. And though basic and simple interactions most of the time, they are going to happen and occur. So teaching your kids to be okay with law enforcement, understand who they are, in a sense, be a bit desensitized to them, is going to help them function in society, because this is a portion of society that's here to stay.
Yeah. So that brings up a good topic too, because we've come across this scenario. So if you have, I mean, obviously, if you have a child that has disabilities, they're living with you for that younger period, at least probably till they're 18, most of the time until they're in that early 20s range. But you're starting to see more and more families and more programs pop up that they're able to send their child to a residential program or to live on their own. And sometimes that's not in the same city or same county that the parents are in or that the child grew up in. So talk a little bit about kind of the significance in, if your child is making that move, the importance of introducing them to the new police, the precinct and everything in that new location, even though the parents are not in that city or county.
Sure. So I think it's extremely important for them to do that, because, you know, especially if you have a child who has had some interactions with us before, even if it's just from running away and we get them and back, you know, over time, the police department, especially if the officers remain there for a little while, are going to get to know who the kid, they'll know who the child or adult is, get to know what they will and won't do in certain situations. When you go somewhere completely new, they have no idea. So it's always beneficial to go and talk to them and introduce them to your child or son or daughter or a grown adult, whoever it is.
Yeah.
Or it's always beneficial to go over there and introduce them and let them know about them, give them the address of where they live, and take your child with you so that they can meet them as well.
Yeah. Do you know if there is a case where a family is moving, if you can make adjustments in your Smart 911 profile, if they do choose to set that up?
I'm sure you should be able to. I don't see any reason to do that. Conversely, the adult child that's moving out could create their own as well.
Okay. Yeah, I think people move all the time, I'm sure. Well, that was like, I think the first stuff that we wanted to cover, because I think the Griffin Project is so unique. So if you're a family member or a loved one and you're interested in learning more about the Griffin Project, to be able to take to your local police station or your local schools, is there a website or something that they can get more information on what the Griffin Project looks like?
No, I don't have a website for it.
Okay.
But like I said, it's basically just an inclusion program where police officers go and interact with the kids in its simplest form. That's what it is. That's the foundation of it.
Yeah. Well, I think that they usually do that. I mean, I can tell you, like my son's preschool, they always do that and stuff. So I think it's just getting it, because you do it with all levels of schooling, right? You do it in the high school. I'm probably mainly in the high schoolers, right?
And that's by design. I typically pre-pandemic years, this is slowly coming back now that the pandemic's pretty well gone away for the most part. Pre-pandemic years, I was in 2 elementary schools, our middle school and our high school. And the idea and the design behind that is that I would start interacting with these kids at the age of kindergarten age.
Yeah.
And I'd be them for the next 13 years through high school years. And that was by design, because the two elementary schools I was in, odds are they would go to that middle school. And if they went to that middle school, odds are they would go to our high school as well. So I would potentially have some of these kids for 13 plus years. And that was by design and on purpose, so that we could have that much time to interact with them.
Yeah. Again, so unique, so interesting. I really encourage parents to try to see if that could be some options in your school systems and in your city. Check out the Smart 911 program, and if it's available in your city, it's available in most, at least large cities, I would say. And again, Sergeant Cheek gave a bunch of advice on if you do live in an area that it's not covered, just take them in. I think you can probably call and make an appointment at least. And we are going to be excited to hear more from you in a couple weeks regarding ways to get that exposure in and introduce your child to a police officer, and kind of good ways to do that specifically in the disability community. So we'll look forward to that. But thank you so much for the time today. We appreciate it.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for having me.